Good afternoon, and welcome once again to NCG Studios, Texas. I'm your host, Darryl Furlow. Glad to be here once again, and also glad to have for a guest once again today, Dr. Michael Jones. Dr. Jones, are you there?
I am just trying to get things together here in the studio.
Well, that's always good, especially when we succeed, huh?
That's
Sometimes it
true.
happens, sometimes it don't.
We are having a barbecue this evening here at the studio, and we have people calling in. I have my cell phone off, and I check it from time to time and see all these little red marks. And so I
Huh.
needed to let my wife know that we needed to call some people back so they can make arrangements to come and pick up some barbecue or eat with us or something.
Well, what time is the barbecue?
Uh, Technically, we are eating as we watch the unconventional pastor, Bob Graves. And
It's
so
about
that's when
seven,
the
seven
eating
o'clock.
begins. I don't know that it will end until sometime after 11.
Ah, well, let's see. It takes us about 8 to 9 hours. We might try to make it.
That'll work. That'll work.
I'd
People,
have to turn around and come back though, so don't count on it.
yeah, I can understand that.
Love to be there anyway, but
Yeah, it would be wonderful. Uh, we have a gentleman who is very good at cooking barbecue, and he promises that this will be his best ever. He's had it on for I don't know how many hours, but it's probably 2 to 3 times longer than he's ever cooked barbecue, and so he's trying to penetrate the meat with lots and lots of smoke.
hmm, sounds good. Maybe if I don't make it, you can just mail me some.
Yeah, we can put bits and pieces in an envelope and go from there.
All right. Well, I've got a question for you. Um,
Okay.
I've been hearing about something about T-shirts, and I think I've even seen one held up. I believe it was Michael or somebody in the studio there, maybe last Sunday evening, held up a T-shirt, and it said New Covenant Group, and then below it it said Atheists and Theists alike. Am I correct?
Yes, in fact, I have one. I will hold it up. It's like this.
I wish I could see it.
Yeah.
But
It's a nice T-shirt. Joey is trying to find someone who can do efficient printing, and so we're going through the process of elimination. We're trying to find a company that can turn it around quickly. In other words, someone can order a T-shirt and they can have it, within just a few days, and it will be a quality product. This one that I'm holding up, it looks good from a distance. However, if you get up close, you see some indiscretions, and those are the things that Joey just doesn't put up with. And so we have to wait until we find a better printer. And so if anyone listening knows of a better printer, please call 1-800-JOEY. And
that'll
I
get
think,
him.
yeah, that would be wonderful. But these T-shirts are wonderful. I think that when we uh, start marketing these T-shirts, that I think it's going to go wild. It's really something that I think that is a game changer for everything, everywhere. And I don't mean to sound arrogant. I just think that what we're doing is better than anything that I've ever seen in my lifetime. I'd love to see something better than the New Covenant Group, actually, but I don't know of anything better than the New Covenant Group. And I'm talking about the people in it. They are willing to be honest. They are willing to move forward. It's all about atheists and theists alike. It's not about um, people trying to convert each other. It's about people being ever so honest, intellectually so, spiritually so, scripturally so, and you just can't beat it. And so I think that when people, not just here in America, but all over the world, when they start realizing what the New Covenant Group is, I think they will rise above their circumstances and become a part of it, because this is the movement called the New Covenant Group. It's about rising above every institution, our governments, and being human beings and being ever so honest, willing to have conversations that never have been possible because of political agenda, etc. And so we crossed the lines, and we're very thankful for that.
Well, I certainly couldn't agree more. I've been around a few years and been involved in a lot of different things, seen a lot of things come and go. And I say that mostly in regards to something that, looking for the positive, looking for something. I've always wanted to be involved in something that is beneficial, something that is, well, I don't know how else to say it, just the best thing that I could find. And not only do I find this the best thing I've ever been involved in, but I can't imagine going another direction that would be better than the one we're going. I agree with you. I look for something better. I think that this thing can only improve and in every way. But where we are now, I'm enjoying. I see the benefit. I know of nothing better. So, the reason I bring this up, I want to, as soon as those T-shirts are available, I want to know because to me, it's going to be a wonderful way to initiate conversation, and I look forward to that.
The encouraging thing is we have people from all over the world wanting T-shirts. And some of these people, English is not their primary language. And we will at some point design them in different languages, and hopefully that will be soon. But the point is, people everywhere are enjoying what the New Covenant group is about because, lots of people, they don't know how to get along in a social environment. They feel very awkward. And the New Covenant group is the kind of place that you can go to and develop social skills. And, if you don't have social skills, if you don't know how to get along with people, the rest of your life is probably going to be filled full of problems. And I think that if we can demonstrate that we can get along as human beings, regardless of what our beliefs are, I think that we can come to the table and start talking more rationally. And this is going to make for not just a better conversation in one particular area of philosophy, but this will make for a better conversation when it comes to our economic environment and what we are going to do across the board.
Well, that statement, I mean, actually it is a statement, and it's obviously meant to make a point. New Covenant group says what we call ourselves, but then the atheists and theists alike makes a statement that obviously is intended to make a point. And I would like you to elaborate on that just a little bit. What is the significance of atheists and theists alike?
I think the important, I should say the unfortunate nature of atheists and theists alike, or atheists and theists together, it's true that we need to be talking. In other words, dealing with the same evidence, looking at it, and sharing why we would think differently about the same evidence. It's quite obvious that you have some theists who are making conclusions about evolution, who are against the finds of evolution, that is, the ones who are in that discipline. And this is troubling, but at the same time, to simply leave them behind and walk away and say, well, we don't want to have anything to do with you, isn't sensible. I mean, you're talking about a lot of people who are really hooked, if you will, on young earth creation science. A lot of people are hooked on presuppositional apologetics, and this is unfortunate. And those people who are hooked on it would say, well, I'm unfortunate because, the wages of sin is death and you're going to hell, and you're an ungodly individual. And that's fine. I don't mind people flipping me off or putting me to the side as they do in these conversations. It comes with the territory. But my point is, at some point, someone has to show enough care to embrace young Earth creationists, the presuppositionalists, people in that category, because those people, in a sense, they are living in a world of flat Earth science, flat Earth theology, and that's sad. And someone has to encourage them by being extremely kind and ask them to get in the boat and say, hey, wow, the world is really round. And guess what? We don't have to obey what man said, God said back in the ancient world. We can actually think for ourselves.
Thank God.
And so encouraging people to use their own minds and encouraging people to look at the evidence is an improvement. And this is the thing that's really sad. We've had so many shows, for instance, on presuppositionalism, and we're going to continue to have more and more shows. Not that we're trying to be mean-spirited, but we want the presuppositionalists to know that we love them unconditionally and accept them unconditionally. However, we certainly want them to know that this should not be a one-sided conversation. It should not be a conversation where a person keeps saying, do you really know? And, that's insulting. And so what you have to do is you have to teach people how to talk. In other words, you have to say, hey, listen, why do you want to annoy people instead of get along with people? Why not try to dig into the substance of a conversation? And many of the conversations that are happening on YouTube and also on Facebook, they're really not having, dialogue. They're having monologue to monologue. And I think the important thing about what we're doing with the New Covenant group is we are encouraging true dialogue. In other words, it's not all mouth and no ears. It's about, this is what I perceive to be true. Now I'm willing to listen to you. And it's moving forward. It's learning how to move forward together with lots of respect, lots of gentleness, kindness, and I think that most atheists would agree with this. We need some form of absolute love. If you want an ultimate in any context, let's call it love. We need that kindness. We need not keep a record of wrongs. We need to be ever so faithful to, whatever science that we're involved in. I think that atheists would embrace that. And I may be wrong about a lot of my points, but that's all right. I don't mind being corrected. I don't mind having a mind change. And that's the thing that really makes me feel good about the New Covenant group. It's not about getting stuck in a fixed belief, but it's about being capable of saying, this is what I perceive to be true, but don't go too far with this. I like what Chomsky said, and I'm trying to remember the particular book, but he wasn't willing to commit to showing forth his particular ideas concerning a particular process because not enough of the information had been put together in theory. And in a sense, I can identify with that because so many people have been pushing me. I want to see what you've been working on for well over two decades, that is, in translation work. And people don't understand that in order to create an efficient model of translation, you have to have actually a theory that you can work from that isn't so synthetic. In other words, I'm not against synthetic modeling. I'm just saying some synthetic modeling is extremely failed. But if you do have an adequate theory to work from, you have a basis to work from, that can provide, true linguistic acquisition, and people can see it. We're not going to arrive at the conclusions that Daniel Wallace has arrived at when it comes to Greek grammar. We're not going to be that foolish. And I'm simply saying that to make a point because he's one of the best Protestant linguists, and I shouldn't call him a linguist. He's more of a grammarian, someone who says it has to be boxed, it has to be like this. He's more of a decoder who has accepted the idea of just taking a handful of English words and throwing them at the Greek text and saying, let's, make up some words and call it our own unique exegetical meta-language, and let's call it a grammar. And this is extremely failed because he doesn't deal efficiently with how language actually works. He's not dealing with the internalist or view that is the nativist in that context. He's trying to deal with it from the externalist context, and he's failing in many categories. And we have people in linguistics and also mind science. They are doing wonders in the category of looking at the genome factor and how that relates to what we perceive to be true, and at what particular time did language become a reality for what we now call human beings. And we see this in the evolutionary chain. And yet, at the same time, we can't even talk about most of this because we're so prone, that is, theists, to look at a creation model. And we're convinced that, the book that we call Genesis is actually a legitimate translation. It's laughable.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I want to go back to something that you stated earlier, and you gave a quote.
But before you go too far, I wanted to compliment someone. Joey, I pick on him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I push him a lot. I don't mean to push him hard, but sometimes I think that he feels like I push him hard.
I think he likes it.
Well, he may not at times, but one of the things that I appreciate about Joey and is that he sees down the road. He sees down the road well, and he knows that there's a lot of work to be done between here and there, and it's, in a sense, it's difficult when you're trying to gather people and trying to get people to work together, especially at first, because when you're outside of the box in religion and you're saying all kinds of things concerning the Bible that do not square up with the text, that is English translations, you're really working outside of the box. And one of the things that he's done over the years is to simply work with me in the context of saying, yeah, we can move here, and I can see what you're doing rationally speaking, but this is defying all the odds. And this is not just true of Joey, but it's true also of Matthew. It's true of my wife. It's true of all of my kids. It's true of crew member. It's true of you, Darryl. It's true of so many people. In the midst of let's say people who would fight and say, how can all these translators be wrong? You guys have really just said, I think they are. And I think that you guys have more than just a gut feeling. You can see that the Bible in English is not satisfying. It doesn't quench your thirst. And you guys have been able to get a taste of that. And you guys have been willing to say, we need something better than what we've had in the past. You're willing to move past the law. You're willing to move past the cross, past grace, and say, I don't need grace. I don't need the cross. I don't need the law. I need to move forward. And that is the dynamic here that I think is so incredibly good.
I couldn't agree more. As a matter of fact, that goes along with the quote that I wanted to make. It's been some time ago, and we haven't. Nothing has been stated about it since. But you made a comment to me one time that you considered having a show of me just going back and quoting some of the songs from the time frame when I was young. You and I were young, actually. You would probably remember most of the ones that I would be able to come up with, but my memory was jogged as you were speaking earlier, talking about these people having monologue, and to me that is so profound. It's so true and yet so overlooked. I mean, it happens all the time, especially when it comes to something that really can make a difference. Because people can sit and talk about football, like that's what they like. They can talk about sports, any sports, or hunting, fishing. Women can get together and talk about the things that they enjoy, whether it be shopping or whatever it might be, whatever individuals enjoy doing. But when it comes to really making a difference and conversing on the things that divide us and the things that separate people, it seems like at best what you normally get is a little bit of monologue and then another division, you know. But it reminds me of a song, and it's one of my favorite lines ever in any song. The song was by Billy Joel. The name of the song is Piano Man. And he simply says, he's talking about these people that all come together to hear him play at whatever bar or nightclub he's playing at. And he says, and they're sharing a drink called loneliness, but it's better than drinking alone. And there's just something about that statement that I think is applicable here. You know, we stay in our own world, or we stay divided, and we may come together briefly, but it's just to share this monologue with one another that keeps our loneliness intact. Because to me, the bottom line here is not cold, hard facts where one proves another wrong, but it's a dialogue that can end up at some point, and who cares when, as long as we're dialoguing and everything's being brought to the table and we're remaining civil and we're actually being, well, let's just use these love terms. You know, we're being kind, we're being loving toward one another because we care. And I think as we do this, this thing called loneliness is going to be put to the side. This monologue will become a dialogue, and we can get somewhere together. And when I think of, I want to get back to this, at least for a little bit, back to the statement on these T-shirts, because I love it. I personally, I mean, I can't say enough about it. Atheists and theists alike. To me, it represents two things. It represents an extreme. I don't know how much farther apart technically that you could get, you know, when you say you've got one who doesn't believe in a God at all, and then you've got one who believes in some kind of God at least. And anywhere in between would just be questionable. Well, I'm not sure, because you have maybe the agnostic. But if you have those two extremes coming together, dialoguing civilly, then what statement does that make? To me, it makes the statement that this can be done. We can all do this. Why don't we? Would be the, you know, would be the real question.
I agree. Maybe next week would be a good time to get your records out. How many records do you have? Now, lots of people listening, they probably don't know what a 33 is, or a 45, and all the things that you collect. How many do you have?
Well, in the 33 and a third, actually. Don't forget the third.
Yeah,
You'll be off a little bit. But probably got, I don't know, in the ballpark of 1,000 in the little 45 RPM. And for anyone, you know, I don't have a lot of technical information to offer, but I can offer this. RPM means revolutions per minute at a turntable, and it spun exactly 45 revolutions per minute to get the exact sound that was recorded. And of course, on the 33 and a third, that's the speed it's going. But
do you have a turntable? Do you have a turntable with a strobe?
I used to, I don't know if I have one of those anymore, but I used to have the kind where you could adjust, and yeah, the strobe, and it would actually line up so that you would have the perfect speed and get the perfect sound. And I tell you what, with a good turntable and a good clean record, you can't get much better sound these days. Now, you had to take real good care of them, or you'll hear snap, crackle, and pop, because the old records would scratch. But I've amazed people with the sound that comes out of some of these old systems. But anyway, 45s, I've probably got at least a few hundred of them.
It would be nice for you to pick out a handful that really have influenced your philosophy, and let's deal with them next week. That would be fun if you would send us the data, because in order to do this legally, and we are very scrutinized on this, we have to put a lot of data up to make sure that we have right disclaimers and all of that. But if you would do that, that would be a lot of fun, simply talking about what people were perceiving to be true, because most of these albums are extremely dated, and that's you may not have 10 or 15,000, but 1,000 of the kind that you have, these things are worth a lot of money in a sense.
Yeah, yeah, and the thing that has happened with me is, and it's really interesting. I think if I were able to sit down and write a book, someone might be interested in it. I don't know, but the journey that I've made back in my early days, back when I was young, teenager, late '60s, early '70s. Music was very influential in people that generation's life, but possibly more so than ones before, possibly more so than ones after. But I was listening to some degree, not to the degree somewhere, but I was hearing a lot of the message that was being stated at that particular time, and it did have a great influence on me. But something happened to me toward the end of that. I found religion, and I used to would have said I got saved, but even then I didn't think of it as getting saved, because I was raised a Baptist, felt like, well, I was already saved. I just got the Holy Ghost, or went a little further into my believing, or whatever. It doesn't really matter, the terms. But what it did to me was it pulled me away from all that influence. And at one point, and I hate to even admit to this, but in another sense, I don't mind, I took no telling how many hundred albums and burnt them. Felt like it was the thing I needed to do, and just get all of that out of my life. And now I've come back to a place to where I look back at what was being stated then, and it had more honesty, more validity, more, to me, more opportunity to go forward and to move people in the right direction than what I got involved in between then and now. And so I find that very interesting, to say the least.
Years ago, I was at a particular book burning, and it's something that's true that comes with my history, and it was very disconcerting, just to watch so many people gathering and saying, this book is of the devil, and yada yada yada. The majority of these books were on philosophy and science, and so I thought that I would put a stop to it, and I didn't know how to put a stop to it. So I had a few Bibles in my car, and so I went to my car and grabbed a couple of Bibles. And so I said, I'm also going to throw something in the fire. And I said, I'm going to throw some of my Bibles in the fire. And no one burned a book from that point on. And I think they were getting the point. It's nonsense to go through the book burnings. It doesn't make sense. And I would like to see, in my lifetime, lots of things challenged. That is, when it comes to why we did X, Y, and Z. For instance, I have to admit, and I've been thinking about this lately, and I've finally come to the conclusion that the day that I got saved, and this was at 4 years old, I'll never forget making this commitment at 4. It was the day that I accepted not Jesus, but I accepted the condemnation of the church. And I keep telling people, the religious mouth will condemn you, but you don't have to accept that condemnation. But the day that you get saved, that's the day that you accept not just the condemnation, but their way out of it. And so you are lured in a sense. Oh, I am condemned, but I've got to get rid of it, and this is the way that I get rid of it. And so what you're doing is you're accepting what the preacher says, the evangelist, or what the priest says by saying, I need to get saved. You know, the simple confession, I need to get saved, implies that you have accepted that you are condemned of God.
Yeah, it's
And
true.
so I'm simply trying to get people to quit getting saved. I don't need to be saved. No one needs to get saved. And I get tired of people saying that this is what God wants you to do. I think that man wants you to think that God wants you to get saved. That would be true. But to say that God wants me to get saved, the question would be, from what or whom? And so salvation, whoever's experienced it in their life, they simply have accepted the condemnation. And I think that's extremely poor. And this is why I can't really embrace the universalist movement, because some claim to be, oh, we are saved, but you're not. But ultimately, all mankind will be saved. I think that's an irrational notion.
I'm like you. I would question saved from what or whom. And the only real answer to that in that theology, system of theology, is saved from God.
Right.
Yeah, that it's once you get past it, it's really hard to make sense of it, and in all honesty, it's even difficult to rationalize how we ever came to believe that anyway. It it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And the interesting thing to me, I'm finding this probably to be the most interesting thing, is that it's not consistent at all with what Jesus taught either. Because the way he taught, it would be fair to say, in modern theology, it'd be fair to question him and say, do you not practice what you preach? Because if he taught to love his enemies, and then we hear the modern idea of what he intends to do to his, then he's certainly not one who actually practices what he preaches.
I can agree. I've heard that somewhere.
Some wise man. Huh?
I think that you wanted to ask a question or make a point earlier, and I did stop you, and I apologize.
Well, I think that was when I wanted to bring up that quote from Billy Joel. But I did want to continue that thought just a little bit, because, in my experience, and this is me personally, and I think that this is where our different personalities and the way we're geared, psychologically, maybe. I know we all have differences in that's why some people are extremely shy and really to themselves, and others, want the world to be their audience. But in my case, I was so easily intimidated, when it came to trying to talk about the things that we talk about at New Covenant Group. And this is what you were referring to earlier, and I love, this is another one of my favorite aspects of New Covenant Group, and that is that we encourage people to come to the table, lay out what you have to offer, and let's talk about it. Let's be civil, let's be respectful, but be honest, open up. And this was something that in the past I just didn't feel like I could do. I was just tied up in knots. And, the things that I've come to understand, the things that I've come to realize have freed me up, to be able to express myself. And not only that, but I love to throw this in too. My mom is, what is she, 82 years old. And about a year ago, She was here at the New Covenant Group in Jasper, and we were just conversing. We do a very similar thing as to what's done on the internet. And she began to really express herself. And actually, she opened up about her. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. When it comes to the Old Testament, there's so many things that she just flat disagreed with. And she expressed that. And when she got through, she kind of sat there a minute, and I guess she was expecting somebody to really just attack her, because it apparently was the first time in her life she had really been able to express herself in that way. And when she was met with not only kindness and no animosity, she actually met with a whole lot of agreement. She was literally amazed. And she expressed after that, she said, that's the first time in my life I've been able to do that. And that just meant so much to me, because, it kind of helped me understand maybe that's where I got that. That's the way I've been. But I like nothing better than that now, than to get the opportunity to express what I've come to realize, what I know to be true, or at least what I perceive to be true. And it's a wonderful thing. And I think this is what New Covenant Group encourages as much as anything else. So
I was talking to someone the other day, and I asked a simple question, and it may not be so simple for some, but I asked, why would any rational person not want to be a part of the New Covenant Group?
Well, I gave you one reason. That would have been mine. But I probably wouldn't have been that honest. I would have just run and hid, and like a lot of people do, they maybe make some snide remark or say, oh, that's of the devil, or, something to excuse myself, and then just go hide from it.
Yeah, I think there is one thing that I do fear when it comes to growing like we are. We are growing, and I know that there's going to come a time in which people are coming our way, not because it's reasonable to them, but it's simply out of herd instinct. It becomes popular, and a handful of people become celebrities, and they follow that instead of making sense of it. And I really don't want that day to get here, in a sense. I want everyone to have, the benefits of looking at this thing between the ears in a rational way. I don't want people just to buy into it like people buy into religion. Religion is, it's so emotional. It wags you emotionally, and it keeps you parking your mind. It's like what I stated this morning. You can start you can park your car, and you don't even have to turn it on. And that's the way the church is, in a sense. You go there, park your mind. You don't have to use it while you're there. And that is the thing that frightens me about any kind of movement, is that at some point something will become so popular that people will just buy into it simply because everyone else is doing it. And that's the thing that troubles me inside, because I want people to see the benefits of thinking.
I would certainly agree with you there, but I would also come back with the thought that, to take that term and be a little more literal with it. If you're herding, so let's just say cattle, and they are going a direction that is going to take them all off a cliff, and they're all going to die there, and you get them going another direction and lead them to a watering hole, to where in just a few minutes they will be there getting nourishment. In that sense, I wouldn't be against the herd instinct. Let's get people going a better direction, and as they turn that way, maybe they can begin to see the benefits and also see the difficulties and possibly hazards that in the direction they were going.
Education has become a popular thing. The negative aspects are you have professors who have to, in a sense, meet the lowest common denominator because so many people are wanting to be educated. And since these educational institutions are interested in getting people from A to B to C, that is, in the context of getting a degree instead of an education, you have professors who are very, very frustrated in the classroom simply because it becomes a political movement just to get people through the system instead of people seeing that, this is a classroom, a place where you can discover and explore and really, find meaning to life itself. And I guess that's what I'm talking about. You can have a lot of people in a room and everybody's chanting, and it doesn't mean everyone is thinking. And
Right.
I understand that if you expose people to thinking, the likelihood is maybe they will think. But this is going to have to be done carefully because we don't need a movement of people who are so willing just to compromise. We need people who are willing to say, this is what I perceive to be true. Let me put this on the marker board. And someone else comes along and says, no, I look at it differently, and here's why. And so you get not just two people at the marker board, but you get the entire classroom, if you will, or the entire movement thinking about the two different mindsets or the two different ideas of how something was approached and what the conclusions might be. And so this is my concern. And I don't mean to sound like an alarmist. I'm simply concerned that sometimes people jump in a boat and they're just there because they're doing the same damn thing that they did in church. And I really want people to leave, not just the church, but get church out of them. It doesn't make sense. A lot of people will quote the book of James, well, religion is this, you're taking care of the orphans and the widows, etc. And I think that's a pitiful quote, simply because religion, when you look at religion, it has killed more people. I mean, the church has killed more people than the KKK. Just because you want to say, I have some bragging rights and I've taken care of a handful of people. I mean, don't be so insensitive to the reality of the overall picture. I mean, for instance, Jesus came 2,000 years ago teaching us that we need to be feeding people, clothing people, taking care of one another. Here we are 2,000 years later, and more people are dying of starvation today than they were in the first century.
It's
and
true.
so what does the church have? Well, look at the Catholic Church. It has billions of dollars worth of palaces. Why? I mean, look at the clothing. Alone, it's horrible. And so you're talking about, people suffering. We're talking about people in pain and suffering, in those kind of paradigms. And we're walking around in palaces. I mean, this doesn't make sense.
I wonder even how many of them are actually members of the Catholic Church and of the different churches that are doing the suffering. And
Right.
really, to me, even more importantly, how many of them are suffering mentally? Because to me, that's even the bigger issue,
Right. But, look at the mega churches. A lot of them, they just put up some kind of building that can house the masses. And we're like cows going in because, the structures themselves are not all that impressive. And they're large, but they really don't have durability. And so it's like saying, let's do something for right now. What happens in the future really isn't important. And I think there's just so much waste. And so, I don't know, I'm concerned in those areas also, but I'm not trying to complain. I'm simply saying that the New Covenant group is a wonderful place to be. It also has to be a place that we can motivate people, give them something good. In other words, we can't just say leave church and go nowhere. We've got to offer them something better. And that's why I
Absolutely.
think that we need to give them a real sense of community. Not that they're not finding community within the structure called the church. They are. But it's like, people who are in an abuse type situation, they will find a way to survive that abuse. Most people do, simply by forming these pockets of community. And I'm simply saying, think about how much greater it would be the day that you leave the abusive mindset and,
Right.
and you get involved with something that's not abusing you, and it gives you opportunity. And I'm simply saying, look at our economic structure today. It would completely change if we actually came together and started talking. We would not have wars any longer if people started doing what we're doing here at the New Covenant Group. I'm convinced that the New Covenant Group is the future. I will go so far as to say that.
I agree. I agree.
We
And
have 2
unfortunately,
minutes,
we're-
Darryl.
We got what?
I think we have 2 minutes.
Oh, do we? I didn't even know we had that left.
Okay.
I guess that's good. Um, I've certainly enjoyed our conversation today, as always, and just appreciate the time together and the content of the conversation. And I know we have much more to look forward to today on the NCG network. Who comes up next? We still got Clash Course?
We have Clash Course coming up in just a few minutes.
Okay.
And
then
I
we
think
do-
Christopher Malte is going to be on Clash Course with Joey.
Oh.
So it's going to be an interesting time. Christopher is an awesome, awesome person. Great host. He's really come on board, not just to learn. He has so much to offer. He's a brilliant young man. We could use 10,000 just like him. We just sit back and learn from him. He's that impressive.
That's great. Well, that should be something to look forward to here in just a few minutes.
I think so.
Well, I guess for now, we'll sign off here from Texas. And once again, we've enjoyed it and look forward to much more conversation.
Sounds good. Take care, Darryl.
You too. Thank you.